"You're not on the schedule today." The assistant said, his tone polite enough not to offend, yet firm enough to block the way. Carole Middleton didn't respond. She simply looked at him. Her gaze was calm, not angry, not pleading. But there was one thing that made the man uneasy, an icy, unwavering determination. The assistant turned away, visibly unsettled. Less than a minute later, the door opened. Another pair of eyes appeared. The woman waiting inside didn't need to ask why Carole had come. She already knew. Camilla rose from her chair. "It's been a while," she said softly. "I didn't expect us to meet under these circumstances." Carole stepped inside, her hand gripping an old black briefcase. "I'm not here out of courtesy," she replied. "And I'm not here to negotiate." Camilla tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" Carole opened the case. No theatrics, no drama. She simply placed a neatly clipped stack of documents on the table. Handwritten notes, printed emails, bank statements, transcripts of phone calls. No explanation. Camilla didn't touch them. She just stared, as if trying to set them on fire with her eyes. "What do you want?" The question came again, this time not out of curiosity, but out of fear. Carole didn't answer right away. She sat down, facing the woman she had endured for years, so many times left out, so many silences swallowed. Today she had reached the point of no return. "I want you to stop," Carole said slowly. "Stop controlling my daughter. Stop isolating my grandchildren. Stop stealing what isn't yours with tactics you think no one sees." Camilla let out a quiet laugh. "I don't know what you're referring to." "Oh, you know," Carole replied. "And if you've forgotten, I brought reminders." Camilla glanced down and flipped the first page. For a few moments she said nothing. She didn't need to. The expression on her face confirmed it. What Carole brought wasn't a threat. It was proof. "I used to think staying silent was enough," Carole continued. "I used to believe that if I stayed in the background, everything would be fine. But all I got in return was distance. Not between me and Kate, but between Kate and herself." Camilla clenched her hands. "This is the royal family, Carole. There are rules you don't understand." "No, Camilla," Carole said, lifting her eyes. "You're the one who doesn't understand. You think power lets you redefine family. But I'm here to remind you some things are beyond your control. A mother's love is one of them." A long silence followed. Camilla didn't answer, didn't argue. Only the steady ticking of an antique clock echoed in the closed room. No one knew what they were discussing, but the palace had already begun to sense something today wasn't like other days. Carole gathered the documents and placed them back in her case. Before leaving, she looked directly at Camilla. No hatred, no fury, only certainty. "If I'm blocked again from seeing my family, if I see Kate continuing to twist herself into the shape you've painted for her, next time I won't come alone. I'll bring the world with me." The door closed behind her, soft, soundless, but chilling enough to make the one left behind shiver. Kensington Palace, early morning. Kate's personal assistant opened the side entrance, stepping out with a conflicted look. "I'm sorry, the princess has a private schedule today. I hope you understand." Carole nodded. No argument. She simply asked, "Does she know I'm here?" The assistant froze for a moment, then replied, "I'm not sure." Carole stood still on the damp stone pavement. The gate closed behind the assistant quietly, smoothly. Just like every polite rejection over the years, never rude, never improper, but always enough to make her feel like an outsider. Back home, Carole unlocked her phone and opened an old message from Kate. Just 4 words. "Please don't blame me." She didn't blame her, but she also didn't recognize her daughter anymore. When Kate entered the royal family, everything started to change, not with fanfare, but little by little. Like water dripping onto stone, not dramatic, but enough to wear down a groove. She first noticed it during the engagement announcement. When William held Kate's hand and stepped onto the lawn waving to the cameras, Carole stood in the 3rd row, no lens turned her way. Even though she was the bride's mother, even though she'd been by Kate's side through eating disorder treatments, tutoring sessions, sleepless nights. After the event, she went to Kate. Her daughter smiled, hugged her, a flicker of sadness in her eyes quickly withdrawn, as if afraid someone was watching. From that day on, every growing distance came with a very royal reason: packed schedule. Security protocols, media procedures are already set, not aligned with royal principles. Phone calls shortened, Visits needed clearance. Letters were silently filtered. She was no longer mom at family meetings, just Mrs. Middleton. Then came the day she sent her grandson a birthday gift, a handmade photo book of Kate's childhood memories. It was returned with a cold note not compliant with Palace Media protocol. That night, Carole walked alone through an empty park holding the rejected photo book. On the way home, she paused on a bench and flipped through it page by page. Kate at 4 swinging on a playground. Kate at 8 hugging her sister. Kate at 14 studying under a lamp. Each photo a living testament to everything she had nurtured, protected, and was now being stripped away from. Carole didn't cry. She just closed the book and placed it back in her bag. A part of her wanted to throw it in the trash, but another part couldn't, because no matter how far they pushed her away, she was still a mother, and that meant she was still standing. The first call ended in less than 7 seconds. Carole stared at her phone. She didn't call back. Instead, she noted the time and jotted it in her notebook with a black ink pen. 3 days later, a gift from Party Pieces was sent to Windsor Castle for Easter. Handmade cakes, a handwritten card, and a little bunny Carole had sewn herself. It was sent with confirmation, but no response ever came. Not the first time. One evening during a charity event at the Goring Hotel, the same place her family had stayed before Kate's wedding, Carole overheard a conversation as she passed through the hallway. They're considered peripheral. No one wants the press linking them to the Middletons. Who gave that order? You don't need to know. But trust me, silence is sometimes an investment. Carole didn't know exactly who they were talking about, but her instincts told her this wasn't just coincidence. This wasn't about small gaps. It was a pattern. A few weeks later, she reached out to an old friend, a journalist, who had once written for Hello magazine. "Do you want the truth?" her friend whispered. "Your name's on the internal list of people discouraged from appearing publicly with the royal family. It's not official, but it's real." Carole nodded. She wasn't surprised, but she said nothing. Just thanked her, then walked away. That night, Carole reopened old letters. Most were short messages from Kate, rushed lines sent in haste. One of them read, "Mom, things here aren't what I thought." And suddenly, the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. Every time Kate had a long call with her the next day, she was suddenly busy. Every suggestion Carole made about her grandchildren's routine was gently dismissed. Every time Kate planned to return to Berkshire, the transport schedule was adjusted due to internal duties. All of it polite, all of it procedural, and all of it with the same result, pushing her further out. Carole began to take notes. Not out of revenge, but so she wouldn't forget. Every small detail, date, time, event response, and emotion. Late one night when the house was dark, she sat alone in the kitchen and wrote in her notebook, "When every form of distance is arranged to make you think it's your own fault, maybe someone's trying to make you believe it is." That was the first time she admitted to herself she wasn't a victim of circumstance. She was the target of something else. The meeting took place in an old cafe near Paddington Station. Carole arrived early and chose a seat near the window, her back facing out, just as instructed. The man came later. He didn't remove his coat, didn't give his name. He simply placed a brown envelope in front of her. "You have 5 minutes," he said quietly. "And no recording." Carole nodded. She wasn't afraid, but she understood the rules. When you walk into someone else's territory, you play by their terms. Inside the envelope was a financial transfer report from a royal charity, 3 years' worth of internal reallocations. There was a pattern each year. A large non-periodic reallocation had been transferred to a secondary fund controlled by 3 individuals, one of whom had been seen with Camilla at a charity event the previous year. Carole didn't need an accounting degree to know something was wrong. That night, she sat alone in her small office in Berkshire, sorting through the files she'd collected. Handwritten notes, event calendars, press contact lists, and things no one ever mentioned, names of rarely photographed advisors. Kate's secondary phone number, the address Camilla had secretly visited late last year. It wasn't because Carole wanted to take someone down. She just wanted the chance to ask the one question no one seemed willing to face. How did it come to this, and who was really in control? 3 days later, she met someone else, Richard, an old friend of her husband's, and a former financial advisor for an independent trust tied to the royal family. "What do you want from me?" he asked after a few minutes of polite catch-up. "I want to understand the system," Carole replied. And I want to know, when someone is removed from influence, how does it happen so quietly? Richard looked at her for a long time. Then he spoke almost in a whisper. You know why they never officially exile anyone in the royal family? Because they don't need to. They just change the schedule, replace the assistant, start a new group chat, and that person slowly vanishes from every circle. That's how power works, quietly, cleanly. Carole didn't respond, but she understood one thing: she had stepped into forbidden territory. And if she continued, there would be no turning back. Back home, she opened the same file she had brought to her first confrontation. On the first page, written in firm handwriting, were 3 lines. No one is pushed out with noise. They are simply forgotten piece by piece. Carole stared at those words for a long time. Then she closed the file. She hadn't come to be remembered. She came to reclaim what was being erased, one fragment at a time. The woman sitting across from Carole was named Margaret. She used to be a junior communications manager at Clarence House, not high enough to shape strategy, but close enough to see how things work behind the curtain. At first, I thought you were just trying to reconnect with your daughter, Margaret said. But now I see you're stepping right into the place they don't want anyone to look. Carole replied gently, I'm not here to bring anyone down. I just want to know if what I feel is real or if I've imagined it. Margaret gave a quiet laugh. What's real and what can be proven aren't the same thing. But one thing I can say for sure, you didn't imagine it. She pulled a crumpled old note from her bag, a scratched-out list. At the top, the heading read, Public Image Contacts to Monitor. Carole Middleton was listed 4th. This was an internal draft from 2018, Margaret said. I wasn't supposed to keep it. But I remembered because in that meeting, someone in the room said flat out, she needs to be removed from the royal media narrative ASAP or we'll lose control of Kate. A few days later, Carole met someone else, a former chauffeur, now a security guard at a small theater in South London. What do you want to know? He asked as Carole handed him a cup of tea. Just one thing, Carole said. Was it intentional? Was I deliberately cut out of my daughter's life? The man was quiet for a while. Then he looked her straight in the eyes and answered slowly, It's not that they're afraid of you. They're afraid Kate might choose you over them. That night, Carole got home late. Michael was already asleep. The kitchen was dimly lit, warm with golden light. She sat down at the table, flipped to a blank page in her notebook, and wrote, They don't remove someone because they don't fit in. They remove them because they're a threat not to security, but to control. The next morning, she received an anonymous letter. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You are being watched. If you continue, no one, not even your daughter, can protect you. Carole laid the paper on the table. Her hand didn't tremble, but her heart grew heavy. There was no more doubt. What she was touching was no longer just a family matter. The meeting was arranged in secret through a middleman. No one in the royal office knew. No itinerary, no escort. Just a private flat in Chelsea owned by one of Kate's friends, a hideaway she used back when she was still a free young woman. Carole arrived first. She stood listening to the ticking of an old wall clock, her fingers gently tightening around her handbag strap. When the door opened, she didn't turn around. I didn't think you'd come, Kate said softly. Carole turned. Her eyes held no anger, no softness, just one thing they need to understand. I've waited years for this moment, Carole replied. I just never expected it would take this long. Kate sat down across from her. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The air in the room wasn't tense, just heavy, a sadness that hung between two people who were once close, now unsure where to begin. Do you know I've been shut out of every event that involved you? Carole asked evenly, without bitterness. Kate nodded, but said nothing. Do you know they monitor even the texts between you and me? This time, Kate looked up. I know. But Mom, if I resist, things will only get worse. Carole studied her daughter's face. So you've chosen to endure. It's not enduring, Kate said quickly. It's balancing. If I push too hard, they'll push back, not on me, but on you. Carole lowered her eyes. She had expected as much, but hearing Kate admit it still stung. I'm not here to ask you to take sides, Carole said quietly. I came to ask one thing. Do you still want me in your life? Kate remained silent. I don't need a title. I don't need a role. I just don't want to wait for a reply like some stranger. Finally, Kate exhaled. Mom, they told me you were trying to use the media to put pressure on the family, that you could damage the image of the royal house. Carole let out a dry, hollow laugh. So you think I'd run to the press I don't know anymore? Kate said, her eyes brimming. All I know is, nothing here is simple. Silence settled once more. Then Carole whispered, Honey, I'm not the enemy of the royal family, but I will be the enemy of anyone who makes you lose yourself. Kate said nothing, but tears rolled down her cheeks, not from pain, but from fear. Fear that if she took one step toward her mother, the door behind her would shut forever. Carole stood up. She didn't wait for Kate to say anything else. I won't make you choose, she said, reaching for the doorknob, but I won't sit still while silence devours you. The door closed behind her, gently, but this time, unlike all the others, it left two hearts on either side, both quietly bleeding. The message arrived at 2:14 a.m. No subject, no sender. Just one attachment, a file containing documents from the St. George's Trust financial irregularities, a list of questionable recipients, and a single blurry photo, Camilla exiting a private building just before midnight. The recipients, two veteran investigative journalists, one from the Times, one from the Guardian. The only line of text carried more weight than anything else. Truth doesn't need a name. It only needs to be read. Carole sat in front of her laptop, staring at the screen as the words "message sent" appeared. Her hand clenched. No trembling, no regret. But she knew at that moment she was no longer just a mother. She had stepped into the light and pulled a very long shadow with her. 48 hours later, the media exploded. Leaked royal financial files. Irregularities at a charity controversial late-night meeting. Who's the hidden figure with Camilla? For the first time. The British royal family faces questions from within. No one mentioned Carole's name. No headline read, "The whistleblower is Princess Kate's mother." But those who needed to know knew. Inside the palace, an emergency meeting was called. A communications advisor set his phone down on the table, his voice tight as a wire. We don't have time to contain. We respond now. Camilla sat still, her face drained of color. For the first time in years, she had no words to steer the narrative. Because this blow hadn't come from politics. It had come from someone she once considered beneath her concern. Meanwhile, in Berkshire, Carole powered off her phone, unplugged her modem, and removed the battery from her laptop. Not out of fear, but because she knew the message had been delivered. Michael walked in carrying a cup of hot tea. You know they won't let this stay quiet, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Carole nodded. I'm not trying to hide. I just don't want them to steal the truth, too. That evening, Kate called. She only said two things. I know it was you, and I don't know what to do anymore. Carole answered. You don't have to do anything. Just be yourself. I'll handle the rest. The next morning, for the first time ever, reporters showed up outside the Middleton home. No microphones, no chaos, just silent cameras searching for a witness to a truth now spreading. Carole peeked through the curtain. She didn't step out. She didn't shrink back either. She knew this was only the beginning, and this time she wasn't stepping aside. 2 days after the leaked reports, the Royal Press Office released a short statement. We will not comment on documents of unverified origin. All activities of the charitable foundations are compliant with legal regulations and are independently audited. Cold, standard, emotionless. Just like how they had always handled her. But Carole knew they wouldn't stop at a press release. That afternoon, the Daily Echo, a royal-friendly tabloid, splashed a headline on its front page. Princess Kate's mother allegedly manipulated media during royal wedding. Sources say Carole Middleton once complained about being treated like a servant at Clarence's house. The words didn't directly accuse, but the structure, the unnamed close sources, the timing, Carole knew exactly what it was. This wasn't aimed at the public. It was aimed at her. That night, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. A reporter finally got through. Do you wish to comment on allegations that you're trying to damage the royal family's image to regain influence over your daughter? Carole didn't answer. She hung up, not because she panicked, but because she knew if this was their next move, it meant she had struck a nerve. Inside the palace, a senior advisor turned to Camilla. She has too much we can't control. If this goes on, everything will unravel. Camilla gripped the armrest. I want every loose end severed, immediately. In Berkshire, Carole received a sudden tax audit notice. 3 of Party Piece's business accounts were frozen for 48 hours due to suspicion of irregular activity. An anonymous email threatened to send forged documents to her family's business partners. Michael turned pale. "They're coming after our blood." Carole sat still. Then she said, "That means they've lost control." That night, Marianne, Carol's lawyer, came to the house. "We need to respond," she said. "If we don't, they'll rewrite the story their way. And next time, no one will be listening." Carole nodded. "Are you ready to let the truth speak again?" She didn't hesitate. The more light there is, the less room there is for shadows. The next morning, an 8-minute video appeared online. No voiceover, no dramatization. Just footage of documents being flipped page by page. Clear records, money trails, signatures, handwritten notes. The final screen held a single line. "This is not a mother's story. This is a question for a nation." Middleton files soared to the top of the national trending list. International media joined the storm: CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. The focus was no longer just on finances. The real question now was, what is happening behind palace doors that the British public has never been told? A new wave was rising, not from the press but from ordinary people. A retired school teacher wrote, "I used to admire the royal family, but today I find myself siding with a mother." A library worker reposted the original article with the caption, "Silence is a form of violence, and there are those who choose to speak for all of us." Inside the palace, the communications team split into 2 camps, one wanting to deny everything, the other proposing to use Kate as a reconciliation figure. William opposed the idea, but Camilla's icy stare swept across the room. She didn't say a word, but everyone understood her decision was made. Kate made her first public appearance in 2 weeks. A neutral-colored dress, a rehearsed smile, a 3-minute speech at a charity event. But all cameras focused on her eyes, and her eyes said it all. She was barely holding it together. After the event, she called Berkshire. "Mom, I don't know how much longer I can do this." Carole froze. She could take media smears, investigations, even threats. But she couldn't stay still while her daughter was turned into collateral. That evening, Marianne returned. "We have more evidence," she said. "But if we release it, Kate won't be able to avoid choosing a side. They'll force her to declare an allegiance." Carole sat for a long time by the window. She watched the distant lights of the town blur in the fog. Then she sighed. "What do you think?" Marianne asked softly. Carole's voice dropped low. "People think this is about me and Camilla, but it's not. The real story is whether I can keep my daughter whole between 2 worlds that were never meant to be hers." That night, Carole wrote a letter by hand. She didn't send it to the press, didn't post it online. She sealed it in an envelope and asked Michael to deliver it privately to Kate. Inside it read, "If one day you decide to step out of that shadow, I'll be here. But if you choose to stay, I'll still be here. As your wall, your wind, your final guard." The next morning, Carole declined an exclusive interview with the Times. She canceled her meeting with an international investigative team. And for the first time in weeks, she stepped outside not to fight, but simply to breathe. A mother can't save the whole world, but she can save her child. A month after the media storm subsided, the press moved on to other stories. Financial investigations were still underway, but described in dry legal terms: internal review, no official findings. No one apologized to Carole. No one mentioned her name. But for the first time in years, phone calls from the palace resumed. The guest list quietly expanded. Her name appeared again, softly, discreetly, on family event invitations. Not crossed out. No one explained why. But Carole knew it wasn't acceptance. It was recognition that she could no longer be ignored. Kate came home. For the first time in 3 years, there was no secretary trailing behind her. She walked into the kitchen, sat at the same old chair from her 20s, took off her coat, and asked like she used to, "What's for lunch, Mom?" Carole didn't ask questions. She poured the tea, placed it on the table, and sat across from her. They didn't talk much, just looked at each other. And in that look, there were things no words could carry. A thank you that had no time to be said, an apology that didn't need to be spoken, and a silent promise from now on neither would fight alone. One autumn day, Carole returned to work at Party Pieces. Former colleagues patted her shoulder. "You're the strongest woman I know." She only smiled. No one knew that tucked away in a drawer, the old black briefcase still sat. The documents inside were now sorted, labeled, and sealed. She no longer needed to use them, but she kept them as a reminder. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. It just needs someone who refuses to back down. That night, Carole stood by the window looking out toward the glowing city lights of London. Michael asked, "Do you regret it? Everything you did?" Carole paused for a moment, then answered, "I don't regret speaking up. I only regret how long I stayed silent. No one called her a hero. No medals were given. But in a system designed to erase those who don't conform, Carole Middleton did the unthinkable. She didn't disappear.